4 rounds a minute. It's an idea made famous by Bernard Cornwell's Sharpe series. Ever since, there has been a myth that this was what the British were consistently doing to beat the French in the Napoleonic Wars. But is it actually possible outside of the perfect world of TV? This is Liam Telfer, a British Army veteran who did 2 tours of the Middle East with the Household Cavalry. He's now a reenactor with a passion for myth-busting the experiences of soldiers during the Napoleonic Wars. In this video, we try to recreate the 4 rounds a minute legend, facing issues with cartridges, shattered flints, and many misfires.
Absolutely no spark. Damn!
Can we do it? Find out here on the Napoleonic Wars channel. Richard Sharpe telling the incompetent Colonel Simerson that the hallmark of a good infantryman was the ability to fire 4 rounds a minute in any weather holds a near iconic status for fans of the period. On paper, it seems reasonable enough, 15 seconds per shot. But this is pretty obviously not a modern-day semi-automatic rifle. It's not even a breech-loading weapon system. Muskets had been around for over 200 years by the time of the Napoleonic Wars, and although these flintlock weapon systems were much more reliable and easier to maintain than anything you'd have seen in the English Civil War, reloading them was still a slow and cumbersome process. A musket worked by creating a 2-stage explosion to project a spherical lead bullet down a smooth-bore barrel. When the soldier pulled the trigger, the dog head would spring forward, forcing the hammer forward in the process. At the same time, the flint in the jaws of the dog head would strike that hammer, creating sparks which would then drop into the pan underneath. That pan would contain a pinch of gunpowder, which would ignite, creating your literal flash in the pan. That flash would then travel through a hole in the barrel to the main charge, which would then explode. With nowhere for the forces created by the explosion to go except down the barrel, the pressure propelled the bullet out of the barrel and off in the direction of an unfortunate enemy. The science behind the musket doesn't sound all that technical. It's a similar combination of chemistry and physics that governs how firearms work to this day. But making sure that everything is in place for that gun to go off? Now that's the hard part.
No spark.
The loading sequence begins with the musket at the left shoulder. It's brought across the body, with the butt of the musket tucked into the waist on the right-hand side. The right hand pulls the dog head back to half cock, making the gun safe, before flicking the hammer forward to open up the pan. With the right hand, the soldier would then reach for his cartridge box, extracting a paper cartridge which was essentially a powder charge with a bullet at the bottom, all wrapped in paper. After biting open the cartridge, the pan is then primed with a few taps of powder into the pan before the hammer is closed, preventing the powder from spilling out during the rest of the loading process. The butt of the musket is then dropped to the ground and brought around to the left-hand side body to make the muzzle more accessible. The rest of the powder and the bullet are then poured down the barrel, but despite what you might have read in Sharpe, soldiers would never have spat a bullet down the barrel. Just imagine if the charge had gone off while your face was over the muzzle. Next, the ramrod gets withdrawn with the right hand and used to ram the bullet and powder so that they are flush at the bottom of the barrel. Cartridge rammed, the ramrod is withdrawn and returned to its slot underneath the barrel. The last thing you'd want to do is fire your ramrod and be incapable of loading the next shot. The musket is then brought back up to the left shoulder. Loading is now complete. When told to make ready, the soldier would bring the musket up so that the dog head was in front of his face, while pulling the dog head all the way back to full cock. With the order to present, The musket is levelled and aimed at the target, with the butt tucked into the right shoulder as the soldier braces for the recoil, which would have kicked like a mule, and waits until ordered to pull the trigger with the word fire. So that's how a professional does it. Now let's see what happens when a cat-handed idiot, aka me, has a go.
Prime a lot by numbers. Prime. So bring it across. So right foot forward into the arch of the left foot. That's it. Have you just made ready?
I've pulled it back to half cock.
Half cock. Cool. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Might need to edit this quite heavily. So handle cartridge. Give her a nice decent prime, and then we're going to, once you've primed, close the hammer and leave your hand where it is. That's it.
Managed to catch my finger in the frizzen. There we go.
Cast about.
Is there an order to pull the?
Just get it down there.
Just get on with it.
Get it down there. And then withdraw ramrods. Ram cartridge. Withdraw ramrods. Shoulder arms. Put them back with those feet. Make ready. Up in front. Present. Fire.
That is brilliant.
Look at that smile.
It wasn't too bad for a first attempt, albeit that one shot probably took me longer than a professional would take to fire 3. What happens when we try to recreate the 4 rounds a minute legend? The first time Liam had a go at this, everything seemed to go relatively smoothly, but the problem was that everything was just a bit too slow. At this point on his first attempt, he just needed to warm up and get back into the rhythm of loading and firing. One of the major early problems was that cartridges weren't always in the right place in his cartridge box to be able to pull them out smoothly and bite off the head, instead wasting precious seconds fumbling to try and find the next shot. And then, a much bigger problem started to emerge. Misfires. Mark.
No.
Misfires were actually incredibly common during the Napoleonic Wars. Since you're relying on a flash in the pan when firing a musket, anything that prevented that initial flash completely scuppered our attempts to fire 4 rounds in a minute. We'd tried to eliminate this kind of problem. We'd filmed on a hot summer's day to make sure that there wasn't any moisture in the air to make the powder damp. But after multiple attempts to try and get 4 rounds off within the 60-second time limit, the flint sitting within the dog head began to fail. Initially, it was just an issue with powder residue built up around the flint, but with time, the flint shattered and failed completely.
Absolutely no spark.
Soldiers would have been used to this in the heat of combat, and they had a tool to enable them to unwind the top of the dog head and slot a new flint into the jaws. The trouble was, not all flints are made equal. After repeated attempts and eventually trying a second musket, Liam was starting to get the hang of things. But then, again, his flint failed.
No spark.
With the afternoon wearing on and us starting to lose the light,
For fuck's sake.
Liam made one final attempt to run off 4 rounds a minute. Could he manage it? There was only one way to find out.
Yes!
So there you have it. Yes, it was physically possible to fire 4 rounds in a minute. But the eagle-eyed among you will have noticed that in all of those runs, Liam had the first shot already loaded, just like Sharpe does in the books. Do you reckon it's possible to load and fire 4 rounds in a minute? Comment below if that's something you'd like us to try, and make sure to like and subscribe so that you can see more videos like this on the Napoleonic Wars channel.